Sometimes in life, you come across something that digs itself into your mind so deep, no matter how much you try to forget it, you just can't. What's up guys, and welcome back to On the Brick. Today's video is one that I will probably never make again. It's not really the type of video that I like making, at least not on this channel. If you're interested in more videos like this, check out On the Brain. And I don't believe it to be a fair and accurate representation of who I am. If this is your first time on my channel, hello, hi, welcome. My name is John, aka On the Brick. This channel is primarily dedicated to reviewing custom Lego. Every single Sunday I put out a showcase of a custom minifig, and every other Wednesday a custom Lego set review, aka mocks. Most of these come from Brick Vault, with others coming from like Rebrickable or even places like Instagram. But the week between the mock reviews, like this week, I tend to do things like review stores, sellers, or oftentimes talk about Lego related topics. In fact, one idea that I have had for quite a long time now is to follow the full and entire process of creating a mock from the moment that someone has the idea to the moment it is finished. I wanted to get in touch with certain creators and designers and see if I could follow the entire process. And I believe that's something which would be really cool for the channel and that a lot of people would really enjoy. But of course, there's no such thing as an original idea in today's world, so I wanted to see if it had already been done. And as I looked, I came across a video I had first been shown when it released 2 years ago. I Quit: The Story of My Struggle. On a quick side note, when I made this thumbnail, my boss almost thought that it was a really messed up way of me saying that I quit. Except that he knows about this channel and he knows about this very video. Let me tell you, just seeing this thumbnail again brought back a flame that has been burning within me for 2 years. Not just because this resonated with me or because this guy's story is impactful and it stuck with me, but because this video is legitimately one of the stupidest things that I have ever seen. We're gonna go through most of the video and I'm gonna tell you why I say that, though in all honesty, you'll be able to see why within like the first 5 seconds. However, there are several things to note before we do that. First and most importantly, I literally could not care less about this guy. I have absolutely nothing against them and hope they're doing well in life. Second, this video has a surprisingly low number of views, especially for a channel that is apparently still active, and I need you to remember that. Third, this is not the original name it had, I think. While I could be wrong, I distinctly remember the video simply being titled I Quit, with The Story of My Struggle being added later, and yeah, this is also kind of relevant. And lastly, I just want to make this very clear, I really do not like talking down about other people, at least undeservedly, and I want to give people the benefit of the doubt and try to be nice. You never know what someone is going through in life after all, which is why I will likely never make a video like this again. However, I also need to be clear that my views and impression of this creator do not come from this single video, but instead I actually went through and watched a ton of their uploads, including a lot of their most recent videos. To be quite blunt, their ego is so high astronauts on the moon can't see it. So I might not be entirely nice, and you'll just have to forgive me for that. But with all that said, what in the world am I even rambling about? Well, Tony Hardy, 1999, or I guess as they go by now, is, or was, a mock designer who decided to quit for various reasons. He felt he was being underpaid and treated quite unfairly. Two claims that we will examine a little more closely shortly. Both, which if true, really do suck. You should absolutely be paid your worth and should absolutely be treated fairly, regardless of who you are or what you do. But that's not the full story here. The is someone who, in my opinion, at least at the time that they made this video, just did not understand how the world works. Based off of what I have seen, this seems to be someone who found it easier to make themselves the victim. Let me show you what I mean.
I really didn't want to make this video, but I think I have to, since I've been thinking about this for like a few months now. And I can't just stop thinking about it, genuinely. Because sometimes people say they think about something a lot, but I think about this every time I do this. Which I mean designing anything with Lego, which is my passion. And this is my last video for the year, and I didn't think it would be this one, but I haven't been using my time well. I enjoy designing, but the reward is pretty minuscule for the effort and design process I do.
But the reward is minuscule for the effort and design process I do. So like I said, this is the basic issue being put into play here. The puts a lot of time and effort into designing custom Lego sets, but doesn't feel like the reward is equivalent to that time and effort. Quite literally, I don't get paid enough for this. And I can tell you from both first and second-hand experience, the design process can take time, but it's also entirely dependent on you. So let's see what struggles arose and why they think this.
Yes, I do. And sometimes, even when I go for the payment, they're hesitant to pay me. My designs are top tier, I think the best out there, since no one else has done what I did. Not to be cocky about myself, but sometimes you have to value yourself in time and talent, which I do.
Well, that's a really weird thing to say immediately. Yes, you should have pride in yourself, but no one likes a high ego. To say that your designs are the best out there because no one has done what you've done is definitely a little weird and a very bold claim to make, especially when it can be so easily checked. There are countless Lego designers out there. Lots of people who have done what The has done, and yes, that's what I'm going to be calling him throughout this video because that's his name, including of vehicles that they have done. Heck, I've even made a mock of the UT-80 which is sitting behind me, and while The's is certainly okay, as someone who has built and reviewed countless mocks, including several UT-80s, I wouldn't consider theirs to be top tier, nor the best. And while I could go in depth as to why I think that, this video is already long enough. So the short of it is, The's is simply quite messy in several places and is not as screen accurate as a mock claiming to be the best or top tier should be. And yes, I actually went out of my way to build his design for this single paragraph. In similar fashion, their police gunship is not bad. It is certainly a vehicle that far fewer have tackled, but it has been done by others, most prominently LDD Model Maker. And while LDD's is minifig scale, The's is clearly meant to be more UCS style. And because of this, you'll notice the two are quite different in size with almost a 6-inch difference in length, which is not what I would consider to be a little bigger. But that's fine, because as the description says, a lot of detail is only available on a larger scale, which generally is true. Not always, but for the most part. Just one question though. What detail is he talking about? Because I'm not asking about his Lego model, because that does certainly have a lot of detail, but what was he basing it off of? It certainly isn't the model that we actually see on screen. Comparing his to LDD's, I can see what he was going for and similar elements between the two, but the very existence of LDD's not only proves that what he said here was wrong, but also just shows that his model is inaccurate. And again, just very, very messy. So 2 out of 2 builds are just okay. They're not really bad at all, but certainly not top tier and very far from being the best. But the reason I even stopped to talk about all of this isn't just to brick all over some random guy and his designs, but because that is the mindset that The is going into this video with. Everything you hear him say from this point out is with that mindset that no one else could possibly do better than him because he is the best. But question number 2. Before 5 minutes ago, did you have any idea who this guy was? Because I'm willing to bet the answer is no. Because of course the answer is no. Because he isn't well known, and he wasn't well known 2 years ago. It's not like he just quit and then lost a lot of followers. He has never been well known. He's never had a large subscriber base, follower count, or even a large repertoire. In fact, he has less than 10% of the subscribers that I do, and I'm still a very small channel. On Instagram, he has fewer followers than me too, and I've only posted twice this entire year. Sorry about that, I'll try to get better about it. All of this to say that while you should value yourself and your work, it's also important to understand your limits and where you are in life. It doesn't really matter if you think you are the best when you don't have the material to back up that claim. But despite all of this so far, we still haven't actually gotten into what his struggles even were. So let's continue.
Initially, I saw this post by Minifig Madness saying help wanted.
Well, there's problem number 1. Minifig Madness is an absolutely terrible seller that you should avoid at all costs. I've spoken about this in several other videos already, but they have zero quality control, saying that obviously misprinted minifigures are within standard, and just outright have terrible customer service. They've actually completely rebranded since this video was made, but have not improved in the slightest, even making what I consider to be the single worst custom minifigure that I have ever purchased. But to be completely fair, that is not The's fault. But let's see if it does come into play.
I saw this post by Minifig Madness saying help wanted about August of 2020, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. I'm actually going to make a set. I was aware I'm talented with designing Lego and every other creative outlet out there with sculpting, painting, drawing. I do it all.
Dude, shut the hell up and get to the point. Because I've just spent way too much time talking about the first minute of this video, and all The has done is brag about themselves so far without actually saying what the hell has happened. This reminds me of when Gal Gadot started singing Imagine at the start of the pandemic, just completely disconnected from reality. Yes, being able to make a custom Lego set does require a little bit of knowledge, especially if you want to do it right. But again, it's something that a lot of people have done, and much more successfully. I've even made a few custom sets that I'm extremely proud of. I'm also pretty good at about every other creative outlet. Here's some paintings I've made. I've played piano for 24 years. I've done creative writing for 21. So let's pause for a quick second so I can tell you, the viewer, 3 important things. First, raw talent can only get you so far. Hard work and consistent practice will get you a lot further, as will having good friends in life. Just because you can do something naturally does not mean that you know how to do it correctly or even well. It's why things like Synthesia tutorials are actually really bad for learning piano. While you do learn the sequence of notes to play, you miss out on all the theory and understanding of how to actually play the piano. Second, just because you are talented in one creative field does not mean that you are in another. I've put a lot of hard work into everything that I've done, but even then, despite being able to play the piano extremely well, I can't sing to save my life. In The's video, he shows these sculptures as an example of his other talents, and look, I'm just gonna be honest, they and the paintings thereof are pretty lackluster. This is the kind of stuff I was doing in 8th grade art class. And again, I'm not trying to insult him here, just trying to show the warped view of reality that he is operating under. And third, while I will emphasize yet again that you should absolutely value yourself and what you do, be careful not to overvalue yourself, because you'll turn the world against you very quickly if you do. As an example, $36 an hour is what I would like to be making at a minimum, because $36 an hour is equivalent to 1 penny every second. That means that literally for every 1 second that passes, I will be earning 1 cent, and I think a lot of you just realized how little money you are actually making. Now, I'll be further honest here and also tell you that I am currently not making that amount of money, even though I personally feel like my time is worth $36 an hour. But if I were to go to my boss and say that I deserve that amount of money and absolutely nothing less, he would tell me, quote, "I would love to pay you that, but you know that I cannot." Yeah, that's a direct quote from my boss after I asked him how he would feel if I asked him that. Your mileage will vary. A better and different example would be like if I went to the Red Rocks Amphitheater and said, "Hey, I've played piano for 21 years, give me a concert. I know that I am really talented, so you should let me perform here because no one else can possibly be better than me." That's not how the world works. Because you know what the problem with being good in a creative field is? It doesn't matter, because there are countless other people who are just as talented or just as good. Think about when you walk into a place like Barnes & Noble, how many of those books you will just never look at in your life, or how many songs on Spotify you will never listen to. If you want to stand out and not be just another drop in the ocean, you have to be great. Exceptionally great. And lucky. On another quick side note, I'm not entirely sure he's being honest about this Batman drawing. There are several reasons why I think that, but then again, this is a guy who has done nothing but show off all of his amazing abilities and talents. But anyway, with all that said, just because someone has a super high ego doesn't mean that their struggle wasn't real. He's still human after all. So let's try and figure out, finally, what struggle this super talented, incredible designer had to go through.
Do it all. So come clean, not throwing anyone under the bus, but this is just the reality. The UTAT took 2 months to design. At the time I was new to designing for people, so I had no precedent and had nothing to go off of. I'd ask for $150 and a figure from Minifig Madness.
Okay, so let's review. The was not given the price from MM. And that's totally fine and actually fairly common. This is generally how it works. The instead requested $150 and for some reason 1 minifig. For a set that took 2 months to complete and is under 1,000 pieces. Ignoring the cost of the minifig as it's a minifig and not actually money, The got paid about 15 cents per piece. Or, if this was a full-time job where he worked 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, then he only got paid $2.13. Which sounds really bad when you put it like that. Yeah, clearly he must have been underpaid. But was he? See, this is the trick when it comes to designing a custom set for hire, or designing anything for that matter. Because the value of what you get paid really depends on how quickly you can finish the design, and also how good you are. But obviously, as we'll see shortly, The did not work on this full time at all. So while $2.13 per hour is stupid low for a real job, this was not a real job and should not be treated as if it were. It was just a one-time project that, to be completely honest, should not have taken 2 months to work on. And let's be very clear here. This was not a 2-month contract that Minifig Madness set up. It just took 2 months for Thud to finish the design. I find it interesting though that he gives excuses as to why it did, because even though he just said how he was new to it, 10 seconds ago he was saying this.
I was aware I'm talented with designing Lego.
It can't be both. If he has the talent to do this, he should not have to qualify why it took so long.
$80. That said, that's how I grew a little bit from them. It wasn't from them, it was my work, so I deserved it. But it took me 2 months, off and on, for a while. Then I've been contacted by this guy called One Stud. He seems like a fine guy, but he asked me to design this Venator class Star Destroyer at a small scale.
So let's go all the way back to the very first claim of this video where he talked about how his sets were top tier and the best. Again, that is the very first thing he said and what you should have on your mind when he's showing you what he has made. And now let's look at this new Venator. So we'll actually see some more shots of this later too, but this one is still just going to be a lot shorter and won't take several minutes because simply put, no. Again, this Venator is not bad. I haven't seen anything horrendous from him yet, but there are just so many Venators out there. This wouldn't even be top 5. Not to mention that there's some pretty severe clipping happening in this render. There's just no way for the final product to look as we see it here. In fact, if we play just a few more seconds and see the reverse angle, I like this mock significantly less. It's honestly kind of bad. Those engines are just some of the worst that I've ever seen for a Venator. The bridge is ugly and not remotely accurate, and when the sides of the ship aren't clipping, you can see that there's a noticeable gap. And before anyone tells me, why don't you just go and do better then? Keep in mind, I'm not the one claiming to have made the top tier and best mocks. I actually know my limits.
But it was just genuinely stressful and horrible designing it. And at the end, I didn't even know if I was going to get paid or not. And remember, this was like 3 hours every day for like a month and a half. Some breaks in between because you get burnt out after a while. So I did that for $250.
So again, $250 for the Venator is not bad. He's getting paid decent money for this. You need to know that, especially as he'll bring up this point later on. And he's really getting paid decent money for someone who, at the time, was new to it all. His words. Keep in mind, the length of time to finish the project, once again, was entirely on him. And he very easily could have said no to the newer projects if he felt like he couldn't handle them or do them at that time.
Remember, I'm also doing other designs as well. So I've been asked to do a long time ago a Mustafar set for Minifig Madness, which is also $200. A Z95 by this one guy for $250. And I also did a ATRT Embark Speeder for One Stud for $75.
So just like the other mocks, everything he just showed on screen, I've thus far seen better versions of. The Mustafar one kind of looked cool, but was obviously an incomplete render. We'll actually see later that it wasn't, and that's the whole thing. I've also seen and built several other nice versions of Mustafar. The Z95 though is one that I just can't comment on. It's an incomplete render with half of the ship missing. That's like trying to judge a burger before it even gets made. But that does lead me to ask, why is he not showing the complete designs? Again, for someone claiming to be as talented and amazing as they are and have the absolute top tier best designs, it's a really weird choice that the only full model we get for any of these sets is the really bad angle taken on a kitchen counter. I mean, a minute ago he was showing off what he was extremely proud of, but why is he not doing that here? What changed? I don't have an answer to this. I'm genuinely curious.
Very persistent and you have to say what you want, otherwise he just walks on you. Because a few weeks ago when I designed the ATRT Embark speeder, I finished it within a week, and then he'd say, I'm gonna pay you half now, and then the rest when I release it, which is next year, and that's unacceptable.
Okay, so we are now officially 30% of the way through this video, and we finally actually get to a point where The has faced some sort of struggle. And yeah, I mean, that is pretty scummy of one stud to do. At least as it was presented here. Keep in mind, we don't have the other half of the story. Splitting payments is totally fine, but it's something that needs to be agreed upon beforehand. If done, it should be like half gets paid before and half gets paid after. But if the design is finished, which in this case it was, it should be paid for. One stud choosing to delay the release does not matter at all in this case. He asked The for a design and it was designed. One stud should have paid in full, which if you look a little further down, it looks like he did. On the other hand, I don't think it's fair to say that one stud is being pushy, as he is still the one paying. He ordered a service that needs to be provided, a service that his business relied upon. And yes, past tense, I don't think one stud is active anymore. When The is taking multiple months to finish designs, one stud is well within his right to ask for updates. I mean, again, he's not giving some small amount of money here. One stud was paying $150, $250 because he knows he can get that money back, but the investment can only pay off once the design is actually finished. And if it's taking months upon months to finish, that's months upon months he's waiting to get that money back. That's income that he does not have. Income which he likely used to help pay his designers. Can you see the problem there? So on one hand, pay your designers appropriately. There's no question or caveat there. Pay your designers. On the other hand, I can see why he may have wanted to split the payments. I don't know for a fact if that is why he wanted to, but regardless, it's not like one stud is some multi-million-dollar corporation. He's as much human as you and I.
Here, and that's unacceptable. Well, that was the second time he genuinely pissed me off. The first time was when I was designing the Venator. I had to take some time off from the set because I was working on school. I'm currently doing that now. So on October 6, 2020, one stud said, "Just doing my weekly checkup, how's it going?" And I replied, "Sorry, I've been focused on school now." And a few days later, he just said, "Just gonna ask you one more time if you have any pics of the design to this point, because I'm really like to release it in October." So within a few days, just remember, I had maybe not worked on it for 2 weeks or something because of school. And I clearly stated that I was working on school. And he pretty much threatened me to work on the design. And I still haven't forgot about that.
The first time that I watched this video, this is the point where I stopped caring about what he had to say anymore. Because this is a moment. This tiny interaction is a moment that genuinely pissed off The. Why? Because the guy who was paying you to do a job was asking you to do your job? The says in his video that he clearly stated he had been focusing on school instead of the Venator, but that was only after one stud had asked him. At that point, The had already stopped working on the thing for 2 weeks and didn't say anything. But the ridiculous part is claiming to have been threatened here. I'm sorry, but I can't even say that he's on a high horse anymore because that thing got in a rocket and took off. This is not a threat. This is not remotely a threat. There is no logical or reasonable way to read this message as a threat. Because it's not. One stud paid, or was going to pay, for a design. A design that The had just stopped working on without telling one stud for 2 weeks. 5 days later, one stud asked if any progress has been made, which is completely reasonable to assume, as he would still like to release in October. And also keep in mind, we don't really know how long he had been working on the thing at this point. This message from one stud was sent on the 11th. There are still 20 more days in October. There are 3 weeks left in the month. How is that even remotely a threat? And what even would it be threatening? To not pay for the project that The didn't even finish? It seems to me that The truly did not understand that when you work under someone else's pay, you work under their rules. If he needed to focus on school, he should have communicated that. If he didn't think he could get the design done in another 3 weeks, which is just stupidly ridiculous, he should have communicated that. If someone asking him to do the job he's getting paid for genuinely pisses him off, that person is not the bad guy.
Remember, within the last month of designing it, I just kind of felt like he was harassing me, knowing every single minute detail about it, but in a kind way.
He was harassing me, but in a kind way. That's impossible, because harassment, by breaking nature, cannot be kind. Statements like this are why I say that The just makes himself the victim.
Just every single time I did something, change that, change it, has to be cheaper, send me the file, has to be cheaper, make it cheaper, make interior, do this, change that. And he would change his mind all the time, and it's just really annoying.
Okay, so let's tone this down just a little bit, because this is an aspect that is 100% completely fair. But it's also the reality of design work. For those of you who don't know, I actually currently work in a print shop and help oversee the graphic design department. And like the rest of the store. The amount of times that a client will ask for things to be changed, especially at a minute scale, is just absurd. I've had clients change the placement of individual letters or make tiny changes to color, or just really annoying things like changing the dots to dashes in a phone number. Even today, the day that I'm filming this, I had a client tell me that a design was perfect and then proceeded to list no fewer than 10 changes they wanted to make. But that's just how it is. You have to realize the designer is being asked to recreate an image that really only exists in someone else's mind. That person sometimes wants it to be exactly how they've seen it, and sometimes they're okay with it just being different. It really depends on the person, and it's part of the job. I don't know how annoying one stud got here, but based off the high egotism we've seen thus far, it could very well just be an exaggeration from The. Either way, it is annoying, but it's how the industry works. And if that is something you cannot handle, design is the wrong line of work. Now you might be thinking, maybe The realized exactly this, and that's why he quit. Nope.
I don't dislike the guy, but it's very stressful working for him. And just recently I've been contacted by the renounced Republic Bricks.
Well, there's your problem. First, he called him renounced, which is the completely wrong word here. Second, man, that's just on you. The 3 people The has brought up so far, people he has designed for, are A, one of the worst stores in the market at the moment, B, a completely abandoned store, and C, someone that a huge part of the LEGO community actively dislikes.
Famous LEGO Star Wars YouTubers. He had contacted me because he had wanted an MTT, but specifically a separatist MTT. I apologize if this seems like I'm throwing people under the bus, but it's just the reality. The reality is, I didn't push them, they fell, and they got ran over.
No, they didn't. He's right that he didn't push them, but that's only because the only bus in this picture is the one that he's been laying under. Can you tell that I hate this video so much? I'm defending these other stores. But before we get into whatever issue arises now, let's recap the problems with the first two sellers, just so we're all on the same page. Minifig Madness. I'm looking for a problem and I just don't see it. Yeah, I've got nothing. I don't know what the problem here is. He got paid and it took 2 months. I'm not entirely sure why he brings this up at all when he immediately moves on from it. I'm guessing it was just to show his first custom LEGO job, because outside of that, he doesn't actually say anything in that section. For One Stud, well, he did have the moment where One Stud wanted to split the payments after design was finished, but it seems like he still got paid and, wasn't that big of an issue. I would have cared a lot more if it was a recurring thing. The threat is egotism at its highest and isn't even remotely a threat, and the harassment is immediately counterclaimed within the very same sentence. So let's not forget that the is the one who stopped working on the design he was paid for without saying anything first, and then got mad that he was being asked about updates. In other words, I'm not seeing anything that the did not bring upon themselves. But we do have one more seller, so let's see what happened.
And when it got to me bidding on the payment, I'd said $450, but then he had not responded for like a few days. And I thought he wasn't interested, so I offered him $350, and I just didn't realize what I had walked into, and what I've been missing ever since I've been starting designing.
Oh, so it's a situation he brought upon himself too. That is literally 100% self-inflicted. Why is he blaming the other guy? So here's the thing about knowing your own value and when you're in a position to actually get it. If the other person doesn't want to pay it, that's okay. That is their loss, not yours. The second you bring down your own value, good luck ever raising it again on your own terms. Compromise and negotiations will always be a thing too, of course, but that's different. That's like my boss who knows he can't pay me $36 an hour, but still shows that he values me in other ways, and again has recognized that he would pay me that amount if he could. The lowering his bid by a full $100 is insane. That is a huge chunk of money that is gone for no other reason than he just panicked. Based off of how he's telling this story, it really seems like he should have known better.
I had known that this MTT was going to be something special that I genuinely thought was amazing, and probably the best separatist MTT out there.
Yeah, not even remotely. No, not even close. Does try to qualify this by saying it's the separatist version, but color swapping is pretty easy in LEGO, especially for designs like this, which would be exactly the same. The design of this model, whether it is Trade Federation or CIS, is exactly the same, and I've seen better of both.
Which I do agree, since I looked at other people and their designs and then tried to improve upon it, including the droid eyes, a nicely sized interior with a retractable droid rack carrying 30 droids, cockpit interior, very detailed for the price.
Okay, so this is actually kind of cool. I never noticed that the MTT does technically have droid eyes. I just always assumed it was a vehicle like the AAT. It's also on the regular version too, and that's actually a really cool detail. It doesn't look that good in this design at all because they don't come across as droid eyes. In fact, for a better version, look at the one on Brick Vault. But hey, you learn something new every day. And as we play this video again, you will hear the talk about how this is the best MTT out there. And I really need to emphasize that it isn't. But again, I have to ask why he's not showing complete renders. Like, this is the model that he included in the thumbnail, and it's finished there.
Too good for what I'd asked. Since I had lowballed myself initially, I still had that stress of, oh, I just lowballed myself $100, so now it's $350. So that I felt bad on that. And then as soon as I started designing, like, it just came together so nicely. It's one of my favorite things I've designed. It's genuinely gorgeous. And just recently I made a post on Instagram of the most recent render of it, and I've never had something genuinely shock me before how good it was. With the droid rack extended out and the full exterior shown, I know this is something special. It wasn't $350 worth.
Yeah, he's right, it's not worth $350. If he feels like he should have been paid more, he should have been paid more, but that's on him. That is quite literally his own mistake. I do think the praising of this set is getting just a little too much. Again, there are better ones out there, and yes, some of those did come out after, but being able to hold droids and deploy them is kind of expected with a mock of the MTT. In other words, he achieved the bare minimum, but is acting like he painted the Mona Lisa. But you know what's really interesting about this? 2 years ago, this small Lego YouTuber called, Mander Productions? Well, he built and reviewed an MTT from the same guy that The is complaining about here. A separatist MTT. This one. And you might notice it's a completely different model, just outright not the same build, because it is someone else's. So what the hell happened with Thuz? Well, I have an idea. In my opinion, the one that M&R reviewed is much nicer. The angles work a lot better, and overall, it's just very clean. It even has the same exact function. I'm not surprised at all though, as this version was designed by David Buckles, who is a prolific Brick Vault designer and overall just a great mock designer. But let's be honest here, the real reason that Thuz is no longer available is probably because he quit. M&R's video came out 6 months after he quit, so I'm pretty sure it just got replaced without a second thought. Still an upgrade in my opinion.
And it was also reinforced by that, by probably one of my favorite guys in the Lego community just now, because of what he did. He's just a great guy. He contacted me and let me know I was being used, pretty much. He had asked how much I've been designing for, and I had said all of the prices, and he was shocked. Because he had said that Republic Bricks was very rich and he was willing to pay, and then said, for that MTT design, you should have got $1,400.
So this is the true heart of the video here, where a decision was made and his passion was lost. This is also why I brought up the Batman drawing earlier. I don't think he was being entirely honest about that, and I don't think he's being entirely honest here either. It's a little strange to not say who told him this. $1,400 is way too much for this design. No one would ever pay that, both because the piece count is simply not high enough, and the final product is just not good enough. But let's say it was a fair price, if he wasn't going to pay you $400, he's sure as hell not going to pay you $1,400. Lego design is a very weird thing that I mainly see from the other side. Again, while I have designed some mocks, I mainly build and review those made by others. However, if you recall, I have been a creative writer for 21 years. It is one of my passions, and in that time, I have done some ghostwriting and other adjacent jobs in the market. On average, a ghostwriter will charge about $1 to $3 per word, or about $50 to $250 per hour. Again, that's incredibly dependent on how much time you actually put into it and how good you are. I can very easily write several thousand words a day without a problem. In fact, not including edits and revisions and all that, I wrote this script over the course of just 2 days, because I've been doing this for 2 decades. And one time in 2016, I was asked to write a 10,000 word story in 1 day. Now, if you paid attention to the math I said about 10 seconds ago, you probably saw dollar signs pop up, as $1 to $3 per word at 10,000 words equals a whole ton of money. At least it would have been, had I actually charged that much. The problem was that 7 to 8 years ago, I was only starting the ghostwriter experience. And like with the MTT, I severely undersold myself. Because, yes, I did actually take the job. I thought that it would be great to have on the repertoire and say, yes, here's what I can do, and no, I will never ever do it again. But I also knew that the only way for me to get the job in the first place, and to subsequently grow my reputation, and then get future jobs, was by having to charge a cheaper rate. I could not charge as if I were a professional when I hadn't proven myself to be. On a side note, the place I did this through showed how many projects you had worked on, so clients could tell that I was still relatively new. If that same situation were to happen today, you would definitely be getting charged the full $3 per word plus a significant rush fee. Now, people know the experience that I have and that I can do a good job. But if I were to suddenly start charging $10 a word, no one would even care to hire me, because the job being done just isn't worth that much. Also, no, do not reach out to me for this. It is not something that I will do. The point of what I'm trying to say here, though, is this. The prices he was getting paid were completely fair. Well, yes, he probably could have been paid more. He hadn't yet proven that he should be, and with what we have seen, I don't believe he ever did. I don't believe his work was ever good enough to actually get paid more than what he was getting. Also, keep in mind that I have spoken directly to multiple designers asking about commissions. I cannot tell you the price, but I can say that when I asked Jarek, who is my absolute favorite custom set designer ever, how much a mock would cost to commission, one with a lot more pieces than the MTT, it was nowhere near $1,400. I just recently commissioned someone for a 2,000 piece set, and I was only charged $250. I have no idea who gave him this $1,400 price. He very intentionally says he will not share who that person is, but it's just nonsense. It would be really funny though if it were Jarek. But I trust him more than anyone else when it comes to all this. And in my personal opinion, and this is just my speculation, I think Thud just made it up. I don't think anyone actually told him that. At least not in sincerity. Remember way back at the beginning when we looked at the UTAT he designed, which came out to be about 15 cents per piece? If that same rate was held here, but at a pay of $1,400, the final set would have to be about 9,000 pieces. This clearly isn't. I would be surprised if this is anything more than 2,000 pieces, which, if you do the math at 2,000 pieces, comes out to 17 cents per piece. Again, having asked multiple designers, that's a pretty fair rate. Now, let's say this wasn't just completely made up and someone did actually tell Thuh he should have been paid $1,400. I wouldn't be surprised if it was just a yes man going something like, yeah man, that's way too low. You definitely should have been paid $1,400 for that. And Thuh just took it a little too literally.
I respect what he does. I look up to him. So that's how I got to know him. He reached out to me, so I was very ecstatic about that. But it's just amazing how on the same planet we're thousands of miles apart, yet we're friends now. And I set it on my shelf and I admire it. And now it's like, well, I know the person that made that, and I'm a fellow designer as well. And we're on the same wavelength, which is I'm very grateful for that. But as soon as you said $1,400, I couldn't stop thinking about it. That is why I'm announcing that I'm quitting designing for me.
Okay, this is a personal thing now, and where we stop watching his video. He spends the next short bit talking about, I'm not entirely sure what, some guy thousands of miles away, and that he quits, and that's all fine, whatever, I could not care less. I am personally upset at the choice to play Sleeping at Last's Saturn in the background here, because that is one of the most beautiful songs ever written and it deserves a better video. Seriously, if you have never heard this song, grab a pair of headphones, turn off the lights, close your eyes, and just listen to it. Forget that the world exists for a second and let the music fill you. And then get mad when you realize that some guy was trying to use that song to emotionally manipulate you into caring about his completely BS sob story. Now, most of the rest of this video is just him complaining about the same things again, and mainly the mistakes that he made. For instance, he says that the pay he got wasn't worth the hours that he put in, and then says,
I also have to do the instructions, buy the parts, which is even more time on that, which also cuts into the profit, because with the vendor, I had been paid $250, but half of it went to the parts.
And again, that's entirely on him. Cost of materials should always be included when you're doing stuff like that. That's just basic knowledge. It's not anyone's fault but his own that he didn't ask for it. But also, that's entirely his choice to do. No one made him build it in real life. No one told him to buy the pieces. I do appreciate that he builds them in real life to make sure that they work, but he can only blame himself for that. And yeah, the rest of this video is literally just more of the same. It's really not worth going into, and like I said, we won't. Because if you remember what I said at the beginning, this is a guy who just did not understand how the world works, and decided to blame literally everyone else for it. But as I'm sure you've seen, he only had one half-legitimate complaint, and the rest was entirely self-inflicted. The 3 examples he brought up were 1, literally nothing, 2, a guy asking him for updates on the job that he paid Thuh to do, and 3, lowering his own bid and underselling himself. I fail to see where the struggles are here, other than a guy thinking this would be a lucrative job that saw endless cash flowing in and that he could do everything on his own terms. But this is also a guy who took several months to finish designs that just don't take months to finish. To be blunt, I have no sympathy for him. This was an unknown designer who thought himself the best. But it did give us some good insight into how this whole process works and what to expect. If you start designing Lego sets under the impression that you'll make tons of money, you should probably reevaluate things. If you go in expecting people not to ask you questions or want updates, you should probably think about doing something else. And if you go into this thinking people won't want changes, you should definitely do something else. Regardless of all that, and regardless of what it is you do in life, you should definitely know your value. If nothing else, take that away from this video. Don't undersell yourself. And if you see a horse, maybe don't get on it. Also, he has this weird series where he's building Theed in Lego, and it's genuinely one of the worst videos that I've ever seen. I mean, it's a music video where he happens to be building Lego in the background. Sometimes. Sort of. Not really. It genuinely feels more like a Cold War era brainwashing video than it does a Lego one. Alright, I'm done. Like, subscribe, all that jazz. I'll see you in the next one.